Imagine you have exactly 10 minutes before your next meeting. You could doom scroll on your phone. You could just stare blankly at a wall. Or, according to a massive new study, you could fundamentally reduce your levels of depression for the next 30 days.
Right.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled you could join us because we are unpacking a really fascinating piece of research recently published in the journal Nature Human Behavior, along with some great commentary from the study's author, Benjamin Cavelods, in the conversation.
Yeah, and the premise of this research completely challenges, our baseline assumptions about mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
We tend to view psychological interventions as a marathon. There's this ingrained expectation that because depression is such a heavy, complex condition, any meaningful change requires an equally massive input of time and energy.
Right, like months of weekly therapy or major lifestyle overhauls.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. 10 minutes. That's less time than I spend deciding what to watch on Netflix on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, it really is.
And we are talking about long-term mental health benefits. I have to be honest, when I first saw the headline, it sounded a little bit like clickbait, like one of those cure your entire life in 3 easy steps pop-ups you see on social media.
I mean, the skepticism is completely warranted. But we are actually looking at a landmark moment in psychological research here.
Really? A landmark moment?
Truly. This is the very first study to demonstrate that brief, single-session interventions can drive month-long reductions in depression in adults.
Wow.
We aren't talking about a quick mood boost that fades by lunchtime. We are talking about a measurable, sustained reduction in depressive symptoms, stretching out for weeks, all from a single 10-minute window.
Which is exactly why we are bringing this to you today. Whether you are feeling the strain of modern life yourself, or maybe you're fascinated by human psychology, or you're just interested in how the medical field is innovating to make treatment more accessible, this deep dive is going to reveal how incredibly malleable the human brain can be.
It really is.
But before we look at what these specific 10-minute tricks actually are, we have to look at why researchers were hunting for a 10-minute fix in the first place. I mean, nobody is suggesting that a quick online video is objectively better than years of dedicated therapy, assuming you have access to it, right?
Right, and access is the crux of the entire issue here. Cavelods lays out some pretty sobering data in his commentary. Globally, there are around 332 million people suffering from depression.
332 million. That's almost the entire population of the U.S.
Exactly. It's a staggering number. And we have long-term effective treatments. Psychotherapy works. Psychiatric interventions work.
Sure.
But the reality of our healthcare infrastructure is that those treatments are simply not accessible or affordable for a massive percentage of the people who actually need them.
Yeah, the logistics just don't scale. You have geographical barriers. If you live in a rural area, you have massive financial barriers, and you have wait lists that stretch for months.
Well, the wait lists are a huge problem.
If you are struggling today, being told you can see a specialist in 6 months doesn't keep your head above water right now.
No, it doesn't. And that's why the goal of this study is not to replace psychiatrists or therapists.
Right.
No one is trying to automate clinical therapy out of existence. The objective is to build a reliable, free option for the millions of people who currently receive zero support at all. It's about creating a safety net where currently there's just empty space.
So the researchers know they need something scalable, something free, and something fast.
Right.
But the way they actually went about finding these 10-minute interventions is completely unorthodox. They didn't just lock a bunch of scientists in a room with a whiteboard and review decades of clinical literature. They went straight to the internet.
Yeah, they broadcast a theoretical question to the mental health community on social media.
Which is wild.
It is. The prompt was essentially, if you could get 500 people struggling with depression to give you just 10 minutes of their attention, how would you spend that time?
No, wait a second. I have to push back here. Isn't it a bit reckless to crowdsource mental health treatments on social media? Think about the advice you see on your own feeds. It's a chaotic mix of brilliant life hacks and absolute unscientific garbage.
Oh, for sure.
It sounds a bit like asking a random forum how to perform open heart surgery.
Well, what's fascinating here is how they handled it. If they had just taken the first answers they got and published them as medical advice, yeah, it would be highly reckless.
Obviously.
But the social media prompt was just the top of the funnel. They received 66 distinct responses to that question.
Okay, 66.
And from there, the research team applied strict scientific rigor. They filtered and analyzed those ideas until they narrowed them down to just 12 interventions to actually put to the test.
So they basically use the internet as a massive brainstorming session to catch ideas that traditional clinicians who are maybe a bit stuck in their ways might have completely missed.
Exactly. It's a brilliant way to democratize the ideation process. When you only look inside the rigid traditional clinical box, you only get traditional clinical answers.
Makes sense.
By crowdsourcing, they pulled in a vastly wider array of perspectives on what healing or coping can actually look like.
Okay, so they have their 12 interventions. Now they need to test them. And they didn't just test this on a handful of college students looking for extra credit. They deployed these 12 exercises to an enormous cohort of 7,505 American adult participants.
Yeah, the scale of that cohort cannot be overstated. When you run a trial with over 7,500 people, the statistical power of your findings goes through the roof.
Right, because it's so large.
It eliminates the noise. It means the results you're seeing aren't just flukes or anomalies based on a few people having a remarkably good or bad day.
So let's talk about what these massive crowdsourced exercises actually were, because the source material shows an incredible variety.
Oh yeah, very diverse.
Some were exactly what you'd expect, right? Rooted in traditional psychotherapy, teaching practical, evidence-based coping skills. But others were entirely novel. For example, one of the exercises was a generative AI-driven writing task.
Yeah, the researchers utilized AI as an active tool for expression and reflection.
How so?
Well, instead of a participant just passively reading a pamphlet about their feelings, the AI would prompt them, interact with their inputs, and help them process their current emotional state in real time.
Oh, wow.
It turns a static 10-minute reading exercise into a highly dynamic conversation.
And then, perhaps even more surprisingly, another intervention was based entirely around a commercial, specifically a Thai life insurance ad.
Right. Those who are familiar with international advertising might know that Thai life insurance commercials are famous for being incredibly moving. They're basically cinematic short films.
I've actually seen some of those. They are absolute tearjerkers.
The specific ad used in the study demonstrates the profound, positive emotional impact that helping others can have on your own life.
But I guess the psychological mechanism there is about externalizing your focus, right?
Right.
When you are depressed, your focus is often turned painfully inward.
Yes.
So watching a deeply empathetic story about altruism might forcibly shift your perspective outward for a few minutes.
That is the exact hypothesis. It attempts to trigger empathy and human connection, which are known counteragents to depressive isolation.
So you have traditional cognitive behavioral skills going head-to-head with an AI writing bot and a tear-jerking life insurance commercial. But to know if any of this actually works, you need a baseline.
Right. You need a control group.
And this brings us to my absolute favorite detail of the entire study.
The control condition is definitely unique.
So one group watches a deeply moving Thai commercial about altruism. Another group does AI-assisted cognitive reflection. And the control group... Wait, am I reading this right? They learn about trout, the fish.
Yes, they literally watched a 10-minute educational presentation about the biology and migratory habits of freshwater trout. That was the entirety of the control condition.
So it's basically a massive A/B test for the human mind, and the control group gets a fishing lesson. You're kidding. Imagine signing up for a matted clinical trial for depression, hoping for a psychological breakthrough, and you get a 10-minute biology lecture on fish.
I know, it sounds absurd on its face. But from a methodological standpoint, it is incredibly elegant.
Elegant. How?
Think about what a control group needs to accomplish in a behavioral study like this. You can't just have the control group do nothing.
Like stare at a blank screen for 10 minutes.
Exactly. Because then you don't know if the active interventions worked or if simply taking a 10-minute break from the stress of your day is what actually caused the improvement.
Ah, I see. If everyone who takes a 10-minute break feels better, then the Thai ad isn't actually doing anything special. You have to isolate the actual content of the exercise.
Right. The control has to be educational, it has to hold the participant's attention, and it has to take exactly 10 minutes.
Okay.
But, and this is the crucial part, it has to be completely emotionally neutral. It cannot touch the psychological dials that the researchers are trying to measure.
Right. It shouldn't make you sad. It shouldn't make you particularly inspired.
Exactly. And learning about trout perfectly fits that criteria. It gives researchers a flat baseline so they can isolate the active ingredients of the therapy skills or the AI exercise.
So if the Thai ad makes people feel significantly better than the trout lesson, yeah, it's the message of the ad doing the heavy lifting, not just the act of looking at a screen for 10 minutes.
Bingo.
Okay, so the participants do their 10 minutes, they watch the ads, they write with the AI, they learn about the fish. The timeline of what happens next is critical. The researchers measured their well-being at two distinct points, immediately right after the exercise and then one full month later.
And the immediate results were universally positive.
Really? All of them?
Participants from every single intervention group, all 12 of them, reported feeling more hopeful and more motivated to make positive changes right after finishing their specific 10-minute task.
Which is great, but also kind of expected. I mean, if you watch an uplifting video or do a focused journaling exercise, you usually feel a little spark of motivation right away. Sure. The real test is what happens when that spark has to survive in the real world through the friction of daily life for 30 days.
And that is exactly where the field narrowed dramatically. When the researchers followed up 1 month later, that initial wave of hope had largely dissipated for most of the groups.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the triad, the AI exercise, their effects faded. Out of the 12 interventions, only 2 online exercises stood out as remaining effective a month later.
The 2 champions were called interactive cognitive reappraisal and finding focus. We need to spend some time here because just naming them doesn't help anyone understand why they worked.
Right.
Let's break these down. What actually is interactive cognitive reappraisal in practice?
So it's a foundational concept in cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive refers to your thoughts, and reappraisal means evaluating them again.
Okay.
The core idea is that events don't cause our emotions. Our interpretation of those events causes our emotions. Depression often creates a distorted, highly negative lens through which you view the world.
So give me a real-world example of how that 10-minute exercise would actually work for someone.
Okay, let's say you text a friend, and they don't reply for several hours. The automatic depressive thought, the first appraisal might be, they're ignoring me because they don't like me anymore. I'm a burden.
Right, and that thought spirals into sadness and isolation.
Exactly. Cognitive reappraisal teaches you to catch that thought, pause, and generate alternative, more neutral explanations.
Like what?
Like maybe they're just really busy at work, or maybe their phone died.
It's almost like finding the emergency brake on a runaway train of thought. You aren't stopping the train permanently, but you're teaching the brain where the brake lever is.
I love that analogy, yes.
And this 10-minute interactive exercise essentially walked participants through that exact process.
Yeah, it provided them with a clear, interactive framework to practice catching and challenging their own automatic negative thoughts. It's a skill-building exercise.
That makes perfect sense. And the second winner was finding focus. How does that differ from reappraisal?
Finding focus is largely rooted in attention training. Depression isn't just about having negative thoughts. It's about getting completely stuck on them. It's an attention bias.
Meaning you only see the bad stuff.
Right. If 10 good things happen to you and 1 bad thing happens, a depressed brain will lock onto the bad thing and completely ignore the 10 good things.
So finding focus is about actively training the brain to shift the spotlight of its attention.
Yes. The 10-minute exercise guides participants through techniques to intentionally direct their attention away from negative rumination and toward neutral or positive stimuli. It's about regaining control over where your mental energy actually goes.
The fascinating thing here is the neuroplasticity of it all. The idea that neurons that fire together wire together. By spending just 10 minutes intensely practicing how to use the emergency brake on negative thoughts or how to steer your attention away from a negative loop, you are slightly altering the physical pathways in your brain.
It's a subtle shift in trajectory. A 10-minute intervention isn't a cure. It doesn't eliminate the depression entirely.
Of course not.
But imagine a ship traveling across the ocean. If you alter its course by just 1 degree, you might not notice the difference immediately. But let that ship sail for 30 days, and that 1 degree shift means you end up on a completely different continent.
Which perfectly brings us to the actual numbers of the study, because here is where it gets really interesting and where I have to play the skeptic again.
Right on.
The study says these 2 top exercises resulted in a roughly 4% greater reduction on a standard depression measure compared to the trout control group. Now, 4% sounds tiny. If I get a 4% discount on a cup of coffee, I barely even notice.
Right.
Why is a 4% drop being hailed as a major success in a clinical study?
What's fascinating here is how we evaluate success. It is completely counterintuitive until you look at the math of public health.
Wait, let me see if I can connect this back to what you said earlier about the 332 million people suffering globally. We aren't talking about 4% for one person in a therapist's office. We are talking about 4% across a massive, infinitely scalable population.
You hit the nail on the head. If you connect this to the bigger picture, treating one single individual in a clinic, a 4% reduction might not feel like a total transformation of their life. But this intervention isn't designed for a single clinic.
It's digital.
It is a free, digital tool that can be deployed to millions of people simultaneously.
The marginal cost is zero. It costs the exact same to send this 10-minute exercise to 10 people as it does to 10 million people.
Exactly. When you apply a 4% reduction in severe symptoms across a population of hundreds of millions of people, the cumulative effect is staggering.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
You are talking about alleviating an astronomical amount of human suffering. You are talking about millions of days of lost productivity restored, millions of relationships improved, and countless lives potentially saved. In the context of global public health, a 4% shift from a free 10-minute single-session tool is a massive public health victory.
Wow, when you frame it like that, it completely changes the perspective. It's not about finding a magic bullet that cures 100% of depression in one person. It's about shifting the needle for the entire human population.
That's the goal.
It validates the idea that we can build these micro-interventions to serve as stepping stones for people who have absolutely no other access to care.
It proves that the tools for battling depression don't always have to be locked behind expensive, long-term commitments. Sometimes, a highly concentrated dose of evidence-based skill building, just learning how to reappraise a thought or shift your focus, is enough to change the current.
So we've gone from a theoretical question posed to the messy void of social media, all the way to a highly rigorous 7,500-person study.
Yeah.
And the conclusion is clear. A 10-minute free online intervention like finding focus or cognitive reappraisal can offer month-long relief for a crisis affecting hundreds of millions of people. It doesn't replace therapy, but it is a vital, accessible tool where there previously wasn't one.
It adds a completely new layer to our mental health safety net, one that can reach anyone with a smartphone.
So what does this all mean for you? It means that your brain is highly responsive. It is waiting for the right inputs. And it doesn't necessarily need 1,000 hours to start making a change. Sometimes it just needs the right 10 minutes to learn where the emergency brake is.
Beautifully said.
But this raises a profound question, something I've been chewing on since I first read through these sources.
Yeah, it really forces you to look at our digital habits from the opposite direction.
Exactly. Think about that Trout control group, and think about the 10-minute mental health exercises that actually worked. The premise proven here is that just 10 minutes of targeted, positive, evidence-based online content can measurably decrease depression for an entire month.
Right.
The brain absorbs that 10-minute input, alters its trajectory by 1 degree, and carries that effect forward for 30 days.
The human mind is incredibly absorbent in short bursts.
So what is the daily cumulative effect of the other 10-minute media snippets we consume online? If 10 minutes of finding focus can reduce depression by 4% for a month, what does 10 minutes of intense doom scrolling do?
Oh, man.
Our casual, everyday scrolling habits, the outrage bait, the tragic news cycles, the endless comparison on social media, acting as daily 10-minute micro-interventions that are actively shaping our mental health in the exact opposite direction.
It's a deeply sobering thought. We've just proven that the brain is remarkably malleable to positive inputs in a tiny 10-minute window. We have to assume the underlying mechanism works both ways.
It has to.
It is equally malleable to the negative ones. Every 10-minute block is an intervention, whether we intend it to be or not.
It really makes you want to rethink exactly how you spend your next 10 minutes online. Something to think about the next time you reflexively pull out your phone while waiting in line. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the mind. We'll see you next time.